Morning everybody. Unit 4 lesson 2, and now we are going to save and read object arrays to and from files. We know how to save and read one-dimensional arrays to and from files. Only a few things that need to be added in order to save our arrays of objects to and from files. If we can have a look on Vutela Program 101, and that's just an Program 81 updated. The student class stays exactly the same. Only thing that's added is highlighted. Step specifies over here in the form load event procedure. We need to read the data from the file students.txt if it exists and save the objects in the array. And then in the form closing event procedure, we are going to save the data in the array to a new file called students.txt. So all the programs that we've got in this section, program 101, 102, 103, 104, builds upon our previous work that we've done. If we then just take one step back and we go have a look at what we did when we saved one-dimensional arrays to a file, then our steps were something like declare the variables, open the file, and this depends on the specifications, but over here we opened the file in create mode. We had a loop to traverse the array. We wrote one name in the loop using the write line method, so this would write one name per line, and after the loop we always close the file, obviously. So that means if I've got an array like array names that maybe stores 4 names, so our array counter would be 4. See, so I've got 4 names. If we save that, the file would look like this, most probably. One name saved per line in the file. If we now go have a look at object data, and I'm going to go to program 81 and the examples I did there, and we're going to pick up from there. So if I've got some objects currently saved in my memory, so I would have an array, and over here we're just going to save a few objects, only 3 at this stage maximum. Currently only 2 saved, and I've got Matlong and Nku. Same from the example I did previously. So if I save this data, please take note of the following. We normally save one record. In our case it would be one object per line. We need to save all the fields, so for us it's the member variable values per record, per object. We're going to use a special delimiter. It can be normally a comma, but it can very well be other data as well. And this special delimiter separates each field that we've got in the file. We are not going to add extra spaces. We don't include any formatting like currency. And guess what? We already have a method in the class that's doing exactly what we need. It's the toString method. So this is the method that we are normally going to use. So if I just save the student data to a file, the file content should look like this. We didn't look at the statements yet of how to do it. We're just talking about the file now. The file for these objects, student number Motlong 6000, student number NQ7000 would then be saved like this. So all Motlong's data is in the first line, all NQ's data is in the second line, and there's only 2 lines because there's 2 objects saved in my file. I need to know the format exactly of how the data is saved, and this is then determined by my toString method. So my toString method saves first the student number, then a comma, then the surname, a comma, the test1 mark, a comma, the test2 mark, a comma, and lastly the test3 mark. That's what it returns for me, and that's exactly how the data is saved. So where in the application will I do it? Best place would normally be when the main menu form is closed, same as what I explained in the previous lesson. If you have different specifications for a program, then we will always follow those different specifications. The algorithm steps are then rather simple and straightforward. Declare the variables. I will still open the file, and here I need to go and have a look at which mode I need to use, append or create. I'm going to traverse my array from the start to the end, so from 0 to array counter -1. I'm going to call the toString method per object, and I'm going to write that return string per line. And after the loop, I will obviously close the file always. So, writing the object data to a file is not that difficult. We already know how to open a file, we already know how to have a loop. I just need to have a look at those specific statements. But I will always call the toString method for every object, and then write that returned data to a file. In VB, my statement would look something like this. I will declare the variables that I need, so it would be a stream writer and a counter. I'm going to open the file, and this one I want to create from scratch. Then I need a loop to traverse my array. And now I'm first going to go and call for every object in the array the toString method, and that data that's returned I'm going to save to a file. I could have done this in more than one step, so I can have dim line as string quite easily, and then I can first go and get my line of data to save. And then save each line to the file. If this is a little bit easier for you, perfectly fine. So get my line of data. So for the object in the array, call the toString method, save that line, take the line, write it to a file. After the loop, I will always close the file. The reading part is a little bit more complicated. Let's look at it. First of all, remember, I've got a special file pointer. That's going to keep track of where I am reading in the file currently. Right at the start, when the file is opened, the file pointer points to before the very first line. I've got a peek method in the stream reader class. That will give me the next character that would be read without actually reading it. And it gives me -1 if I've reached the end of the file. You can follow this link to go to the documentation, but here I've got a screen print of the important part. So the peek method gives me an integer, and it tells me here returns the next available character but doesn't read it, doesn't consume it. Gives me -1 when there's no more characters to be read. So that means when I read the data from a file, I need a loop. I don't know how many lines there would be. And I can now either end the file or end the loop using an until or a while statement. And my two conditions I already gave in the last lesson. I just wanted to repeat it a little bit. Either continue the loop until the peak method gives me -1, or do the loop while the peak method doesn't give me -1. Choose one of them and always follow that. So my loop to read until end of file in VB to specific statements, and I get similar statements in all the other programming languages as well. And now I need to, the second point, know a little bit about extracting data from a string. When I normally read the line, I would get this whole line back. How do I use it? My program will need to divide the line into the different fields that I've got in order to use it. And luckily, string processing will come to our rescue. There's a split method in the string class. And again, you can follow this link to go to it, but I've got a screen print of the method. This is a split method in the string class. So same class that gives us index of and all that other methods. There's more than one split method, they are overloaded, so there's more than one way to call them. The easiest though would be to take the split method that's called directly for the object that I want to break apart, so for the line. It gives me back an array of strings containing one element per each of the fields, and I will tell it what is my separator using a parameter. So the separator and the different characters, we're normally going to only have a comma. It returns square brackets. In many programming languages means array, and that's what they've got over here. So the steps to extract the data, and this I'll now need to do in my loop. I will need to read one line, then I'm going to use the split method to divide that line into different fields. I need to get the exact data to save in my different fields. I will need to create the object. I will need to save the object in the next available array position. I will need to increment the array counter. Let's see how to do this. We will first need to declare and use quite a few local variables to save all the data. I need my file. I need the line that I read. I need the array where I save the data. Take note, I don't need to create an object. There's no new there. And I need to use variables to save all my different fields, member variables. And I need a object. Okay, so now the first statement in the loop. Now I'm just looking at how to split the line. I will need to read the line, then use the split method. So for the line read, split it wherever you get a comma. This split method takes a character, so I need to specify the string is a character, same as what we will use something like same as what we use over in this example to specify that this number must be converted to a decimal. So if I've got a string, dim initial as, let's say I've got a character and I want to save an initial in it, F, I need to add the C to specify that this is not a string but a character. Different languages have got different ways of dealing with characters and strings, so this is what VB does. So I need to specify this comma is a character, and the split method is called and it gives me back an array. Data is an array, and this would now, with the first data, give me back an array where the different fields are saved in the different elements of the array. So my data, when I read it from the file, looked like this, and in this sequence the data is then saved in the array. Let's just move it a little bit so that we can see what's going on. Okay, so everything before the first comma is saved in the first element, then in the next element, next element, next element, next element. This is all saved as strings because VB can't decide for us what type of data we've got. So my program will now need to take that array and save the data in the different local variables that I've created. So student number, surname, test1, test2, test3, and whenever I've got integer or decimal or double data, I need to convert that. And then I need the statements to create an object using this data, save the object in the array, and increment the array counter. So over here I gave you the VB statements. We're going to have a look at the programming logic English statements in a moment. We need to just take or remember that when I read from a file, I might have an error. So we can use exception handling, try catch block then, to detect and recover from errors in our applications. There's actually a file not found exception that can be raised. So very often it would be good programming practice to include the statements that would read from a file in a try catch block. But at this stage with you guys, if you just check that the file exists before you open it, you won't have any problems. All should be fine. So if I now have a look at the steps to read the object array data from a file, first of all I just need to know where to do it. Best place would be when the main menu form is opened initially, once right at the start. So that would be in the form load event procedure, but if you get different specifications, that's exactly what you're going to follow. The algorithm steps then, first of all I'm going to test if the file exists. I'm going to open the file from reading. I'm going to have a loop until I've reached end of file. I will read a line. I will need to break that line into the different fields. I will create my object using that data. I will save the object in the array, increment the array counter. That would be the end of the loop. After the loop I close the file. If I've got a problem, I will display a message to say, oops, there was no file to be read from. And this might be a problem or not, depending on the program. Very often, right at the start, the very first time that we run the program, it's not a problem because there's no initial data. So these are my algorithm steps then that I need to follow. If I now have a look at the example program 101, it's an updated version of program 81. Then first of all, for the class student, there is absolutely no changes. I already have a constructor that takes all my data, and that's what I definitely will need. I need a constructor that takes all the data of the class. I also have the toString method that I specified long ago already. If we can have a look at the application, new things are highlighted. I will best is to add a constant for the file name so that I always use exactly the same name for the file, students.txt. We're going to add a form closing, remember my zinger wings, event procedure, refer to the previous lesson if you don't know how to add the form closing event procedure, and I'm going to add that for form main menu. I need two variables, a counter and an output file, and I'm going to use the module data. So my steps would be to declare the variables, open the file for create, a loop through the array, call the toString, write the data to the file, and herewith we have the VB statements. And I've already shown you that we can also break this up a little bit. First get this line and then write the line to a file, and that would be perfectly fine. In my form load event procedure for the main menu, I now need quite a few different variables. I need my file object that I'm reading from. I need to read the data and save it in a line. I need to use my array to store the data of the line, that line that the split method will give me. I need a variable for each of the fields of my class, just to make my programming a little bit neater, and I need a variable for the object. So my statements would be test if the file exists. If so, open the file for reading, loop until end of file. I will read the line, I will break up the line in the different student fields. I will create a student object. I will save the student object in the array. I will increment the array counter. After the loop, I will close the file. I will just display an error message if there is no file to be read. And here within the VB statements. So test that the file exists, open the file for input, a loop until end of file, read a line, call the split method, get the different fields from the array, create the student object, save the object in the array, increment the array counter after the loop, close the file. Okay, and voila, now it's just a little bit of practice. You guys will need to go have a look at all the other programs, program 102, but again, you're just going to add the steps to read and write to the file, and they are highlighted. If you go though to the next topic in Unit 2, Lesson 2, there's a combining all concepts, program 110 and program 111. So with these you are going to start from scratch. First the class, then all the different things that's got to happen. So where we use the same program in lesson 2, in lesson 4 of unit 3, lesson 3 of unit 3. We build up and added something every time. In these last exercises, combining all, you can do everything from scratch in order to design the programs, and then optional extra if you can code it from the planning. But my subject is all about the planning part. Thank you. This is then the end of this lesson.